was flowing pilots. This is Pearl Pilot here, and we on to journal number 2. So in journal number 2, right, what we're going to be talking about is this next phase of the project that we are earning through this forging of this new skill, which is 3D animation, which we use the software Blender as a tool to utilize that. But besides that, one of the things I wanted to talk about in this journal, just to kind of be a, again, reference point, you know what I'm saying, each tutorial I go through and video, I'm basically going to be creating these journals that are going to be reference points to different areas and basically be like little reminders of each phase and different things to keep in mind when creating. So from that, in this video by the Blender Guru, shout out to the Blender Guru for all the tutorials and stuff like that, very helpful. Actually was helping me create my first tutorial, well, not tutorial, but project, which would be the donut. You know what I'm saying? Because I ain't gonna lie, learning this Blender shit is not easy. You know what I'm saying? You go into this whole thing, try to figure it out on your own, stuff like that, like without the starting point of the person who created it in the first place, you're already gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard. But without getting too distracted from the actual main point of the video, this video goes into size of light, right? Previously we did one that talked about direction and things like that, but in this one was about size. So notes from this video. So basically the video explanation, the explanation of size for lighting is said from the lens of thinking light is a floating light bulb. However, it is not. You know what I'm saying? Because humans like to think that there's something outside of themselves that is kind of doing something on its own, when in reality we have to be in something to see something, right? Because at the core of everything, you ain't nothing. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise you would change when something changed at the same time, but you are observing the change. So that thing that is observing you going from one mind state to the next, that is actually what you are. And it ain't got no name to it, because it ain't nothing. You know what I'm saying? However, going to this point, right, this is said from the lens of humans looking at something they had to be taught, rather than go outside for themselves and see what it actually is. And when we say things like that, right, think about, keep it simple, right? When you go to school, what's the first thing you even think? Like before you even learned, got indoctrinated, light was something outside of you, what was the first thing that you then went to school and was taught, right? In science class, they started to go over the sun, the planets, and how all these different things are like outside and they got distance to them. Like no, because in reality, if you actually ask the right questions, first of all, if it is something outside, right, that you could go towards, why don't they record the entire journey from when they lift off the earth, right, and then go out into space? Why do they cut cameras scenes when they do that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to ask simple stuff like that, and that'll start to lead you to different thought forms of seeing other things that show you otherwise, right? So when you actually look at reality, you don't have to look outside of yourself to see an answer that's right in front of you, right? If I turn off this light, right, or for instance, I clap my hands, right, I just played a micro scale of what we see on a macro scale. Every time we go outside, we see the event or the sun, you know what I'm saying? And shout out to Uriel, you know what I'm saying? Light does not travel, light is emitted, you know what I'm saying? And so when we actually see that in reality, anytime you do anything, you clap your hands, you turn off the light, you're emitting something, right? this light is playing out as sound. That lets you know that sound is also a form of information or a form of light. And depending on what two high velocity objects that you bring together will be what is emitted. For instance, if I was to get two pieces of metal and bang them together hard enough, you would actually start to see that accumulation, which would play out as the sparks. You know what I'm saying? It might even start a fire depending on where I'm at, which lets you know that everything is emitted. Sound is emitted, and all of that is created through fusion and friction and the accumulation that we experience, right? And so based off of knowing that actual tool of existence that we all do and see, otherwise you wouldn't even be here in the first place, the size, replace size, right? Because when I was watching the video, he kept saying size, and the only thing I could hear was no, nothing. I couldn't hear size. I heard nothing. It was really just emission, right? Something is emitted. And so depending on you being the creative director trying to direct a environment, which would be the scene, whether that's a character, whether that character is playing out as a characteristics, or it looks like somebody that looks like you and me, you know what I'm saying? Objects, it can be words, sounds, all those are different examples of different characteristics, right? Because they all were created from the space that you had to put things together to even make out, right? So based off of that character and things like that, when you're in that space of even creating that, let's say for existence, I'm trying to create an environment, right? And I'm using Blender to do that. Now, based on how Blender was made, it was already created based on humans who even thought that you could have a light bulb outside of you. But we know the actual starting point from that. It's really things that's being emitted. So when you're trying to, based on the idea and the feeling you had for that environment you're creating, that size of what's being emitted can show or present based off of what idea and feeling you had. You know what I'm saying? Like, for an example, right? Let's say I want to show the details on a rock. You know what I'm saying? Or I want to show less details. I may let the emission of that light not be as much. You know what I'm saying? Whether it plays out daytime or nighttime. But without going too broad, right? Because I'm already kind of experiencing little boundaries and stuff like that, just being in this space in the first place. Based off of knowing that, right? We know, however, since we are all experiencing the same thing, regardless of how humans look at it, what you are really seeing is emission, not size. Size comes after emission, which emission is from fusion and friction of two high velocity forms, objects, or angels, right? So from that, emit the emission of that event being produced when we use different lenses to view it, whether clouds, right? Because when you look at these different tools that we can use to take pictures and videos, all of that just mimics the mind, right? Anytime you put something in front of something, that's a filter. You know what I'm saying? You're filtering it through something to achieve a specific or how you want to see something, right? Which really, if you think about it, like just wanting to see something one way is kind of, that's very close. That's very close as a spirit. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of egotistical a little bit and narky, which kind of lets you know that that's how this world was built off of, and you participated in that in the first place. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here in some shape or form, being in this form, having these different experiences, right? So from that, right, from the size, we see the fusion and, well, from the fusion and friction, things get emitted, and then from that, from those two high velocity objects, we see the emission playing out in different things. And then once that is an environment, right, then you have other micro things playing out the macro scale. So you have other things that can play out like filters, whether it's clouds, perspectives. You can even use different geographical locations and positions. Another example would be camera people, right? They have different lights that they may use to create different lighting environments, and then they may use filters to kind of filter that light through something, so that way when it gets emitted, and when it hits that other form, that emission starts to filter through differently, so the shadow may not be as sharp, or it may be a little more smooth, to achieve that kind of scene you're looking for when you being the creative director. So knowing that, on a macro scale we see the moon, and on a micro scale we see shadows and reflections, which is just another example to let you know we're all doing the same thing in our own way. And when you look out in life, we see examples every single day. But with that being said, this is going to be journal number 2. I'm going to finish watching this video because I ain't finished it. I just have to make this quick little note on there, and we're going to get to part 2 once I finish the entire thing. Whew.